Simply asking the question, did the Bears do enough to make you happy at the trade deadline? You can only do so much. We live in a salary cap world in the NFL, and if you're prepared to take on a salary, it means you probably have to move another. And I go back to the concept of so many decisions the Bears made to determine their flexibility or to determine what they needed to need even was back in the offseason. And when people aren't happy that there's enough of a pass rush, it goes back to the contracts that we talked about. Montez Sweat, $98 million. Grady Jarrett, 40 some odd million. Dio Odengbo now out for the season at $48 million. Those are the contracts that influence how they were able to move and I think be flexible or not flexible. So I understand just simply getting a backup that has the body type that Dennis Allen likes. I understand needing someone. You needed to get somebody else once you knew Dio Odengbo had gone down. That was clearly the roster move that was made afterward. Former first-round pick at that from the Browns. But I don't know if people are going to be happy based on seeing what other NFL teams did, knowing that if you wanted to wheel and deal, you could have yesterday with some relative understanding that there were deals to be had. For example, the Jets reportedly were okay with Breece Hall going for a third rounder. You know, there are other moves to be made if you wanted to.
I like what the Bears did in terms of standing pat on major deals, which would have meant giving up, let's say, a fifth rounder or higher. I was completely on board with, hey, they found a guy they think they can turn into a depth piece with what they got from the Browns. So would I rather have the other guy from the Browns that rushes the quarterback?
Myles Garrett?
I would. But realistically, where they are right now, one guy isn't going to, even if they had Myles Garrett, it would have made a difference. But what you would have had to give up and understanding how bad and in a bad position that defense is, I'm good with what they did. This year is about Caleb Williams' development, is about learning how to win. I feel like they're doing those things, and then you can reassess the defensive part of it at the end of the season.
There's also some I think clues you can pick up here, some data in the Bears acquiring Joe Tryon-Shoyinka from the Browns. That is the backup pass rusher that we're talking about, backup defensive lineman. Is that number one? You know, the arm span is there. That's something that 34-inch arms report. According to the reports before his draft in 2021, that's something that we know Ryan Pace likes. We know that Dennis Allen likes that length. I think there's some traits there that Ryan Poles still likes. I think I just said Ryan Pace. I'm really sorry. That's a Hail Mary for me. That Ryan Poles likes, you know, there's still some traits there that I feel like Ryan Poles is still very into when it comes to the makeup of his players. When you talk about, whose draft was it last season, or who's deciding what type of player they want, there's still that marriage, I think, of what Ryan Poles in that front office likes in somebody. The arm span, as I mentioned, the length, the fact that the Bears seem to be very keen on going after former first-round picks. Does the name Alex Leatherwood ring a bell? You know, so I feel like that is something where they will still take a flyer based on previous decisions that were made about somebody's talent. Makes me believe that perhaps he was scouting him in the past, you know, so that might go into this as well. Now, that's my own question that I'm asking. That's not something we have proven from Haugh.
I think you're always scouting if you are in the front office, your GM, your scouts, your assistant GM. Everybody's got to have a firm grasp on what everyone's roster looks like for the other 31 teams and an understanding of where they are, how they're performing, if you think you can get them and make something better out of them. And look, this is that time of year where, you know, they just had, 4 guys come in and audition for running back, basically, workouts. You're always looking for the next guy. It's like we talk about baseball and arms. Football, it's everything because people get hurt at such a higher rate at every position.
That's it. Your depth is gonna matter. We know that. Like that's not even a question. It's how you're engineering your depth. And when you're still looking at what the deficiencies are, I think we always look at it as trade deadline. How can we fill the need that is the most glaring? And so you're naturally going to ask about the sack production, for example, you're naturally going to ask about the pass rush. And I say that knowing that the secondary is injured. So I still look at the numbers. Denver Broncos are still leading the league with 40 sacks. Detroit is behind them with 28. That's how big the gap is between number 1 and 2 in the league. And the Bears have moved up slightly. They're not at the bottom anymore. They're tied with a group that has 17 sacks as a team. That includes Arizona, the Houston Texans, and the Dolphins. So is it good enough based on the money you spent? No. If you spend top 10 money on a position group, I would like you to be in the top 10. But that's not the case, as we know. Grady Jarrett wasn't healthy. But other than that, you could still say that's a number that needs to be higher. And I tend to think, okay, so based on their cap flexibility, did they do enough? And you can say yes, but then you see how other teams go, like the Eagles or the Colts, and how they can wheel and deal. And of all the teams that you would think don't have a lot of cap flexibility, it might be one that went to the Super Bowl.
What I like about the Eagles is, and they went out and got, 3 different players leading up to the deadline. They didn't wait till the last minute, first of all. They're always like, okay, 2 weeks out, we're going to add this, then we're going to add that, we're going to add some more. And the understanding is, hey, we're making these trades and we may not have the cap flexibility for next year, but we know the cap is going to go out. And they bank on the fact that the cap goes up every year because it is the NFL. And short of a pandemic, the cap is always going to go up when you're the most popular sport in a nation that is as rich as the United States of America, where people have shown you how much they're willing to spend on the product, going to the games, on also the apparel, the merchandise, and also just the ability to watch the games. As you see how many different streaming platforms they're on right now that people are willing to pay for to see their team play. I think the biggest thing, Leila, is that when we talked about yesterday, how good that offense has been, bottom line, top 10 in all the major metrics, top 5 in some of them. Their defense, bottom 7, bottom 10 in all the major metrics. And you wish they could do something about it, but I've come to the point that that's not going to happen this year.
We had Andrew Brandt on the show a few months ago, and he talked about how previously your budget is the cap, but that's not the case anymore. The way you restructure signing bonuses, the way you can restructure a contract, that goes into the future. And the Eagles are one of those teams that have done that. They've kicked the can a long way down the road when it comes to some of these players. Now, yes, the cap does go up. There's also been several reports about teams selling shares. The Bears did that privately. They went to a private member of the board to do that. That's where we got the $8 billion valuation from. But part of the reason is to get capital to pay some of that stuff later. So how that plays into what you're seeing right now, I think, is this. Certain teams know their window is now. So what can they do while they have to pay a quarterback, for example? What can they do to make sure that they are getting the most talent they need for right now? They'll deal with later. And I think when it comes to sports, you can do that. It's not the same as a traditional business because your goal is to beat another business, so to speak, every single week. In this case, I think it's partly business and it's partly knowing that this is what we have to do in order to win. This is Rahimi Harrison Grote on 670 The Score. Mark Grote joining us, by the way, with what should be a very eventful day at Haugh. He'll be at 125. We are talking about whether or not you think the Bears did enough at the trade deadline. And I go back to the question about running back. Do you feel like it was more answered? Or was a week like what you saw against the Bengals a mirage? That's the hard part, too, is I feel like teams will make decisions a little more pointedly based on the game that is the week before the trade deadline, or the days before the trade deadline.
I was never going to be okay with them giving up a 3rd-round pick for a running back. I don't think that's smart. I think before the Bengals, take the Bengals out of the mix, right? We know they rushed for a billion yards against the Bengals. Before that, they were already a top 5 rushing attack, and they were also trending in the right direction for Ben Johnson and what he's trying to do with that running game. Right now, they're the number 2 rushing offense in the league. I think they are capable with Kyle Manungai and certainly DeAndre Swift to do what Ben Johnson wants to see get done. When you look at what they've done with their running game as a total, not just the running backs themselves, but with the offensive line team. Think about how much of a mess they were early in the season and what we saw on Sunday, not just the offensive line itself, but the tight ends and the skill position guys, the receivers, the way they blocked. It was a team effort with the running game. Don't waste draft capital on a running back. And you know what? To be honest, it all makes more sense, the draft itself, and why they were okay with, all right, we'll wait till next time if it's not the specific guy that Ben Johnson has his sights sets on that's available.
This hour and this segment brought to you by AlmostFreeTeeth.com. Save on dental implants today. This is Rahimi Harrison Grote on 670 The Score. So that's part of it, too, is when you know you can't do much, then who are you going to rely on that maybe you didn't plan on relying on before? That's where I think Austin Booker comes in. Does he become a starter now that Dio is out? And if so, how does he work with Dennis Allen? And we did see some flashes that I think were good, even in what we saw. Anthony Herron talked to us earlier in the week, former defensive lineman, as we know. And he brought up how you can't hang your hat on just one good pass rush play. But it's funny how these names that you get excited about, say, in a preseason, or, you know, Ryan Poles acquires in the later rounds of the draft, are suddenly front and center. And this is the case. Like, you need these guys to step up. We didn't talk about the need for offensive line in the trade deadline because, number one, teams don't trade left tackles. Like, just kiss that goodbye. And I think, number two, you didn't see the Bears giving away any of their linemen either. And I think it's because of that depth piece that you talk about.
Well, it's also hard to give away linemen when half of them are injured and not ready.
One of them is being used as a backup tight end recently.
And I don't hate it.
Ozzie Trapillo?
10 snaps last week at basically an extra tight end, an extra blocker.
How many times did you rewind the game while it was going on? Every single time I was like, oh, is he checking in? And I just had to like rewind and double check to make sure that's what was going on in the personnel.
I was waiting to see if he would be passed to. That was because, remember, early in that game, we had non-traditional plays. I'm not even calling them trick plays anymore. Just non-traditional plays.
They're trick plays.
And as they kind of ramped up to saying, oh, we're doing this and we're doing that. Oh, and we're also doing this and that. And like this, Anna, they were doing everything. And so I was like, is Trapillo going to get targeted here? Is Trapillo going to? I was waiting the entire time, but he's on the field for 10 snaps. They ran the ball effectively with him helping out. And I think Trapillo, his time is coming to catch a football.
I don't know, man. Darnell Wright showed some pretty impressive gymnastics at the end of the game. He's agile.
I don't even know if he's agile. I was like, I'm glad no one was within 5 feet of him, because if he hit somebody doing that cartwheel, I was like, I don't know if I'm more worried about Darnell Wright or just somebody else in the way.
If you're confident enough to do a cartwheel in a game celebration like that while moving, you're agile. You know your body.
You're the one who likes him in space, so I get it.
I liked Braxton Jones in space. Braxton Jones is now in the IR.
Theo Benedette looked good in run blocking on Sunday. Pass blocking, I think he has some work to do. But as you said, there's no left tackles available at the trade deadline, traditionally speaking, unless you're going to take someone else's cast off that has lost their job, a la Braxton Jones. And so I'm good with what the Bears did overall, because they're still in the mix. They're 5-3. They added a depth piece. And I'm just waiting to see, when are these guys for Dennis Allen coming back, or if they're coming back, I guess.
I think there's been a lot of reliance on the Bears front office saying, oh, we can change you, or we can make you what we think you're going to be, a la Gervon Dexter, perhaps Dayo Odengbo. I feel more confident in this coaching staff about trying this concept with a guy like Tryon-Shoyinka than I did previously, but I'm still waiting to see that fully realize.
Yeah, I think it's
and that's a polite way of me putting it right now.
Well, no, I think it's a work in progress, but also, Leila, I think we got to let it play out. We're above, in my opinion, we're above expectation right now, being 2 games over 500, just about halfway through the season with these Bears. And so I want to see if they can figure out how to make this not just a team that happens to win, but a team that other teams fear.
Yeah, just show me talent that the Bears front office has developed, and I'll be listening. But some of these guys some of these guys came to be on their own, and others I think I'm still waiting to see.